So many familiar faces. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. My name is Tiffany, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at Books Are Magic.
Woo!
We are so excited to have Rachel Harrison and Nat Cassidy here with us tonight to celebrate So Thirsty. But before we get started, I wanted to point out some logistics for how tonight's event is going to go. If you need to use the restroom at any point, the door is located right next to the Moleskine Center on the right side of the room. We'll be doing hand-raised audience Q&A toward the end of discussion, so start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them tight. After the talk tonight, Rachel will be signing and personalizing at the table next to where you checked in, and I'll remind you where this is at the end. We'll let you know where and when to line up for that. If you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of So Thirsty online using the link in the live stream description. So Thirsty. Since I've been screaming from the rooftops about this book, I'll be reading from my own shelf talker. This edgy vampire novel not only has wicked vampires and awesome gore, it also explores life's endless changes and everything that comes with a new phase. This book made me cry quite a few times because it's so perfectly captured what it's like to fear the unknown, but still take risks for the possibility of something better. This book is as much about the depths of friendships and living your truth as it is about the thirst for blood. Quite frankly, this is one of my favorite books of the year, and I can't wait for everyone else to go read this. Rachel Harrison is the national best-selling author of Black Sheep, Such Sharp Teeth, Cackle, and The Return, which was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award for Superior Achievement in her first novel. Her short fiction has appeared in I'm butchering that, in Electric Literature's recommended reading as an Audible original and in her debut collection, Bad Dolls. She lives in Western New York with her husband and their cat, Overlord. Nat Cassidy's horror novels, Mary and Nestlings, were featured on best of lists from Esquire, Harper's Bazaar, NPR, and the New York Public Library, and more. And he was named one of the writers shaping horror's next golden age by Esquire. His award-winning horror plays have been produced across the country, including Off-Broadway and the Kennedy Center. You've also maybe seen Nat on your television, guest starring on shows like Law & Order SVU, Blue Bloods, Bull, Quantico, FBI, and many others. But that's a topic for a different bio. His next novel, With Toy Nightfire, When the Wolf Comes Home, hits shelves in April 2025. You can pre-order that with us. He lives in New York with his wife. So without further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to Rachel Nat.
Thank you so much for coming out. It's so lovely to see you all. I just appreciate it so much. I'm so excited. Thank you, Nat, for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here to celebrate your amazing book.
Thank you. So if it's okay with you, I was going to read a little bit, and I was going to read a scene has some curse words and a little bit of spice, if that's okay? Can I get into it? All right. So this book is about Sloane Parker, who is kind of stuck in a rut in her life, and she is gifted a weekend trip with her best friend, Naomi, who is a bit of a troublemaker. And Naomi is desperate to get Sloane out of her rut, and because of that, she gets them invited to a party, and Sloane just discovered it's a certain type of party and dragged Naomi into the bathroom, as we do. We squeeze into a small, dated powder room. Dirty mirror, peeling wallpaper, disintegrating tile, clumps of dust gathered in the corners. The toilet and sink are a sickly green. The bronze fixtures long ago lost their sheen. Naomi pulls down her stockings and sits on the toilet. I'm sorry about what I said before. I just think, I can't believe I have to ask this question, but is this an orgy? God, no. I experience a brief, sweet relief. Then she says, well, I mean, it might be. What do you mean, might? I don't think there's any middle ground when it comes to orgies. It either is or it isn't. I'm not sure, she says. There was an implication tonight would be wild, but Illy never said anything explicit. Yeah, we need to go. She grabs some toilet paper, wipes, flushes, pulls up her stockings and pulls down the skirt of her dress. She crosses to the sink and washes her hands. Nay, we didn't sign up for this. We don't have to do anything we don't want to do. I slap my hands to my forehead in disbelief. You mean I don't have to do anything I don't want to do? Because you're clearly into it. So what if I am? Lee and I went to a party like this in Amsterdam, and it was honestly the hottest, most insane experience of my life. But Levi isn't here, is he? Neither is Joel. I'm surprised she'd go there. Now, I'm fuming. Just because he cheats doesn't mean I can't stand to hear myself say it out loud. Say that I wouldn't cheat. Because maybe it's the truth and maybe it isn't. But neither makes me feel good. What about you? Lee would be okay with this? She takes my lipstick out of her bag, reapplies killer. We have an agreement. What kind of agreement? Why have you never... I stop myself because I realize I already know the answer to this question. Naomi's never told me that she and Levi have an open relationship because of the infidelity in mine, which is so insulting and embarrassing. I wish I could crawl into a deep, dark hole and never come out. Turn into Gollum, only a more depressing version with nothing to love. It just never came up, she says. A lie to spare my feelings that has the exact opposite effect. All right, I say. I take a turn on the toilet as Naomi fixes her lipstick in the mirror, dragging her pinky nail along the edges of her lips, her finger coming away red. The idea of a party like this is a lot, I know, but in practice, if you just go with it, it's so freeing, so fun. Remember fun, Sloan? Were we not having fun? That's not what I meant, she says. Sure, I mutter. I'm distracted by a clanking noise, by a low, distant groan. It doesn't sound like a pleasurable groan. It sounds pained. Do you hear that? She doesn't answer. Nay. You know what? She says, whipping around as I make myself decent and elbow her out of the way to wash my hands. No, I'm not going to let you do this. Make me feel bad for embracing the night, for taking you here, for getting you out of your fucking house with your snooze-fest husband who can't keep his dick in his pants, who doesn't make you happy, who you won't leave because you got your heart broken once in college and have been fucked up about men and sex and yourself ever since. Let up, Nay. I'm here at your orgy. You go do whatever you want. I'm not stopping you. No, we're talking about this. Is there no hand towel? She shakes her head, looks up at the ceiling. You're not ever going to confront it, are you? You're just going to bury it. I bury everything, I say, giving up and wiping my hands on my t-shirt. You deserve more than... It's not about deserving, Naomi. That's what you don't understand. Life isn't some, I don't know, fairy tale. Not everyone gets to frolic around the world, partying with bands and movie stars and heiresses and counts. Not everyone gets what they want. That's bullshit. You're trying to make this about me and whatever you think my life is like. But this has nothing to do with me. This is about you giving up. In her voice, there's a quaver that destroys me. It's too late, I say. I made my choices. It's not too late. It's not. She takes my left hand and slides off my engagement and wedding rings, 2 simple white gold bands I asked for because I felt weird about Joel spending thousands on flashy jewelry when that money could be put toward a house or my debt. I let Naomi do it. I let her slip the rings into her jacket pocket. You should fuck someone tonight, she says. Maybe you'll come so hard you remember who you really are. Happy birthday. She pushes past me and opens the door. She pauses to make sure I'm following. You could have been a great poet, I say. Maybe in my next life. I go with her, back to the party. Not because I want to, because I can't hide in the bathroom all night. It has a weird smell.
Woo! Oh man, now I want to hear the rest of it.
Oh.
It's so good. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Nat.
Hello, happy So Thirsty Day.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me. I can't believe it's finally here.
I know.
Before we dive in,
Okay.
is there anything further you think we should know about this book or anything you don't want to... Are we okay to talk about the monster in the room in the book, as it were?
It says it right there, so
Okay,
I
good.
feel like we're pretty good to say this is a vampire novel.
It's a vampire novel. How many people out there have had a chance to read this, by the way? Okay, so yeah, some of you know just how goddamn good it is, and some of you have this in your future, and I'm envious of you for the experience. I love this book so very much. It is so funny and witty and gross and upsetting
Thank
and
you.
sad, but like sad in like a good way. But it is also, as we've just covered, a vampire novel.
Yes.
So my first question for you is, did you always know you had a vampire novel in you? Is this a monster that you've kind of been fascinated with or preoccupied by, or did it just kind of tap on your window one night and say, let me in?
I think as I like continued to write, I did like a witch book, and then I did a werewolf book, and then people kind of were like, vampires? And I think that was the point where I was like, yeah, probably. Like, if I get to keep doing this, and like, I hope I do, then yeah, I want to write a vampire book. But I was never like, I've always liked vampires, but I was never like a vampire obsessive. Like, I didn't have an Edward Cullen poster on my wall.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I wouldn't say no if he showed up at my window, but like, yeah, I don't think it was fate. I think it was circumstance.
Yeah. That makes sense though, because like I feel like one of the many delights of a Rachel Harrison novel is that there's always like some sort of metaphor at play. There's a series of metaphors at play, and I always love how you will take a genre trope or a monster or something like that and start unpacking it for some greater resonance. And I can't imagine this story without a vampire, and this feels like just a beautiful, important story to be told, specifically because I remember when I first read this, and I posted something, the way one posts, but I said something to the effect of like, this feels like the most death-obsessed book of Rachel Harrison's that I've yet to read. And that's saying something, because there's death in all your books. But I feel like what it spoke to, for me personally, was just like this, it so perfectly captures this sort of like early middle age feeling. You know, there's a poet, I should have looked up who it was. I forgot who it was. But he said, old age is an island surrounded by death. And middle age is not that.
That guy seems like a lot of fun.
That guy was
to
a
hang out
downer.
with that guy.
He was a ton of fun at parties. But I feel like middle age is like a peninsula surrounded by death. You know, you just start to like understand.
Real optimistic take there.
This is as happy as this conversation is going to get, by the way. No, but I don't mean that to sound like this book is dour by any stretch. It feels like it is. These characters are at this point in their life, and it's something that like I feel like I recognize at this point in my life too. And I don't want to speak for you, but like it seems like it comes from a personal place. So maybe you have these sort of feelings too, of like just starting to really confront the idea of aging and the idea of mortality. And so that makes sense to me that then like it would kind of naturally become a vampire story as well. But like, is that accurate? First of all, like, were those things you wanted to tackle in this story?
Yeah. So the idea for the book, I was like looking in the mirror one day, like we do, and kind of like confronting that I look different and that I am aging, and I was a girl in the 90s. I like always agonize over my reflection, and just feeling like frustrated by it, and thinking like, well, vampires don't see their reflection. I was like, huh, and then I was like, they don't age. Like, and then being like, that's interesting, and that was kind of where the book started. But I think what's like so thrilling about writing, and this happened with Such Sharp Teeth too, where the metaphor kind of opens up. And so originally it was just about aging and mortality, and then it became about so much more. It became about desire and want and what it means to actually live, and having like, would it make a difference if I knew I was going to live forever? Would I take advantage of the time differently? And the answer is probably not. Like, you have to figure it out now. You have to take advantage of the life that you have. And so that's how the metaphor changed, but it did start with aging.
I love that. I love that about vampires too. That like, what other monster is that flexible? Like when you write like a zombie story, there are some shades that you can add, but like with a vampire, It could be like the vampire's a parasite. The vampire is like an aristocrat. The vampire is a small town. The vampire is friendship. Like it's so interesting.
That's why I think there's so much vampire fiction. Like I don't think it will ever go away because it's just there's so much to explore through vampires.
Yeah, and it's we're having a moment right now. We're having a vampissance,
Yeah.
which is always exciting.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that I feel like this book also deals with, in a way that I found thoroughly fascinating, is friendship, and they're very different. It's very different from The Return. But I feel like you wrote the quintessential book about friendship in your 20s, and this kind of feels like friendship in your 30s. You know, like the friendship pool is smaller, the stakes are higher. No pun intended. But like you don't have as many like frenemies around you. You have the friends that are like kind of your ride or die friends. And so when that friendship is threatened, or when you feel like you're splitting off into two different directions, like it feels like that much more apocalyptic. And so I find like this makes such an interesting reflection, as it were, of The Return. Did you find yourself thinking of things like that as you were describing this new story about friends and this botched friendship getaway that is so delightful? It's my favorite orgy in all of fiction. It goes places.
I wasn't really thinking about The Return when I was writing it, though my editor was like, it can't be at a hotel. So I was like, it's a cottage. I've already done the hotel thing. But I was thinking, I think it was the aging was at the beginning, and then also I was like, what about like Thelma and Louise with vampires? Because I try and do something different with each book, and I wanted to do, like most of my books, like it's like one big set piece and all of the action takes place there. So I was like, what if it's like a road trip and they have to, like there's momentum and they have to go here and then they have to go there and then something happens and they can't stay. So I set that challenge for myself. But in terms of the friendship, I think it's harder when you get into your 30s because people kind of settle into their lives a little bit more. Like in your 20s, things are kind of still in flux. In your 30s, like people buy houses, they start having children, they set down roots. And in some ways that's like really amazing. And in some ways I feel like my friends and I would kind of just sit there and be like, so we made these choices and we're here and like what's next? And I think, it's interesting because some of us were like, we made all the right choices. And some of us were like, oh, fuck. Like, So I think for Sloane and Naomi, I was kind of exploring the fuck of it. And also how you can still change in your 30s. Like there's still, I think when I was younger, I thought like you become who you are and you just stay on that road and everything. But like we're constantly changing, and we're going to change in our 40s and our 50s. Like it's always going to be something. And setting a new challenge for two friends who love each other so much and are ride or die. But what happens when you undergo a change and it strains the relationship? And how can you overcome that? And how can people deal with things differently? I think I love my friends so intensely and my friendships are so important to me that it's more interesting to me to explore friendships in fiction. So that's always kind of going to be the center and the heart of the stories.
Yeah.
And this one was just, I wasn't thinking about it in like terms of what I've already done, just what was interesting to me now.
Yeah, I never really thought about it before this very moment, but so many vampire stories are about isolation. And, either the vampire is the isolated creature and is tortured by it and just beautifully tortured by it, or people are isolated by the vampire and cut off and picked off and stuff like that. And I'm not aware of one that's so, gleeful's the wrong word, but there's a joy to discovering these characters' friendship together. Like it is very much a road story. It's like a Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra sort of movie, but there's fucking blood everywhere and all these wonderful set pieces. Are you a let's get Let's get writer nerdy for
All
a
right,
second.
all right,
You a
let's do
plotter
it.
or a pantser?
A little bit of both. I kind of used to be like, just let me be free. Let me like see where it goes. But then like I'll get like 30,000 words into a book and be like, oh, this doesn't work. So I waste time that way. So I think I need to like lock in on an idea and feel like this is the one, and then write an outline, not like a detailed outline, but like this is what it's about and this is where it's going, and make sure there's enough like meat there to like make it a full novel. It'll change as I write, but with Black Sheep, I like did a beat for beat outline and I wrote the novel based on that outline, and it came out like shit. I had to start over because I think I need to give myself a little bit of space, like as I'm writing, to be like, oh no, like what if this happened, and kind of let the story breathe a little bit and surprise me. That's what makes it fun. That's exciting to me. I wish I was more of a plotter, because I imagine that's nice to just be like, and then this is gonna happen, and you hit all the beats and not get halfway through and be like, is there a plot in this book, or is it just vibes? Is it just characters? Is it just banter? So I'm somewhere in between, but yeah, I think I'm envious of the plotters. Grass is always greener.
Yeah, always, always.
What about you?
I'm also kind of in between. I will write an outline that will be kind of vague.
Okay.
And then I'll give myself room to like improvise in each chapter, and then invariably the characters will fuck everything up.
Yes.
And then I'll have to make a new outline. And so it's like a series of like, it's not quite it's like shortsing, not pantsing.
Okay, so
Like
we
it's-
both.
yeah.
I'm in like jean cutoffs.
Yeah.
What are you in?
Oh, like a culotte. No, what
Like
is?
a cargo?
Yeah, cargo shorts. Yeah, that's great because I got like
Okay.
I got little compartments for my plot.
All right, cool. Yeah, I have no pockets.
but my keys
my
are slipping
pockets
out.
are like peeking out of the cutoff. You know what I mean? Those kind of like real farmer girl. They're short shorts.
Yeah, hot pants.
Yeah.
What about music? Because there's so much music in here too, and the music is like it's almost like its own character. Like there's a fucking soundtrack to this story that is delightful.
Thank you. It's interesting. I think kind of I don't like have a playlist when I start a book, but like there'll be a playlist when I finish and like kind of going into edits. And it's hard because I like generally try and avoid like specific references or like pop culture references. Like I want the book to feel timeless. So usually the music that goes in, I feel like has to be like, I'm not gonna put in like a summer pop song that I feel like might not, it's not tested, but like Baba O'Reilly, like everybody knows that song, and so I feel comfortable putting it in. But yeah, it kind of just comes across organically, and whatever the story, like whatever feels natural to the story. I don't know how I came up with Baba O'Reilly for the soundtrack for the orgy, but like
The
it
sexiest
happened.
song imaginable.
I think because there was like a stack of records, and I was like, what would be in like a stack of records in like an old man's house? Like,
Yeah.
and there was just like, yeah, it'd be like the Who. So
Well, I mean, if you really want to get like lit theory, but if you want to get like pretentious English student, it's
All right,
about
go for it.
it's about a teenage wasteland, which is about frozen adolescence, which is about living forever. It's not about maturing.
sure, that was exactly my intention. I thought about it. I was very strategic about my choice. I wasn't just
But
like,
you fucking Buddy Holly.
yeah, the Buddy Holly was very intentional. But the Buddy Holly thing is because I feel like my best friend Courtney and I are like joke about stuff like that. That's like a conversation we would have with each other where it's just like, yeah, if La Bamba came on the way to the airport, we'd be like, we're not getting on the plane. So some of that stuff is more
This
personal.
is a book obsessed about death.
Yeah, maybe, I mean,
Every
maybe,
day,
maybe
it's
I'm
getting
death
closer.
obsessed. I think a lot about death.
I once flew out.
Having fun, everybody?
I once flew out of the Anchorage airport in Alaska, and it's the Ted Stevens Airport, which is named after a guy who died in a plane crash. Tell me about.
That was probably a fun flight. Just white knuckling it the whole way.
Oh yeah, and it's Alaska, so they're tiny Buddy
Oh,
Holly
gosh.
planes too. Talk to me about the mall. What about the mall?
Well,
in this
again,
book?
my best friend Courtney and I both have dream malls. And that was something that we bonded over. So Courtney's not Naomi, but I feel like a lot of the banter that they have together feels like conversations that we could have. But it's such a specific. I feel like it's important for me in my books for them to ring true, and sometimes the specifics are more universal than just trying to make something up or pull something out of the air. And it was just such a random special thing that we just discovered about each other, and I think that's the magic of friendship and forming connections with other people, where you feel like you have something that's just yours, and even if it's something pleasant, being alone with something pleasant isn't the same as sharing something pleasant with somebody else, and to have to bond over that. And we're also both Jersey girls, so of course we're we love them all. We're dreaming about them all. But I think it was just kind of pulled from that very specific, special thing. And it's cool because people will be I also have dream balls, and they'll send me messages. So I just love that. I think it's just such a point of connection, and just finding that random thing that you have in common with somebody else is just the best thing in the world. It's magic. So it was important for me to start off with this point for them that's just a really special bonding point that I think people can relate to. Even if they don't have a dream ball, they have that thing with their best friend where they're just wait, you too? And it's something that you share with them. Yeah.
So it wasn't about the stagnation of American commerce and the slow decay of the shared communal space.
Course. Do you have an MFA?
I do not. I have a BFA in acting. Very useful. I'm going to ask another nerdy writer question.
Okay.
Because I will never forget when you announced this book, and you announced it as Thelma and Louise meets vampires.
Yep.
And the title was So Thirsty. That title is fucking perfect. It nails so many aspects of poor Naomi, poor Sloane's struggles, and Naomi's too. When in the process did this title come? Was it always So Thirsty?
Yeah, so it's interesting because all my other books, I'm I don't know, here it is. What's it called? And then, literally not until right before we announce it do we come up with the title. The book is done and usually edited before we come up with the title. The next book, no idea what I'm going to call it. This is the only book that I came up with the title first. It's just oh yeah, vampire book called So Thirsty. I just felt so proud of myself because it's such a yeah, I love this title. And I think I was just proud that I came up with it first because I wasn't sweating it out. We always knew what it was going to be called. So yeah, it was always So Thirsty.
It's perfect.
Thank
you. Absolutely perfect. I'm glad there wasn't another book called that
yeah, that's
would
always
have ruined your plans.
I had a good idea for the next one, and then I was you Google, and you're someone can. So.
It's called To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
It's going to be fucking great. It's about all these birds. We got to kill them. Well, speaking of books, this is a question that occurred to me that I'm curious to hear your answer, obviously. This is your 6th book.
5th.
5th?
Yes.
5th? Oh, I'm including Bad Dolls.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Let's say 7th if you want to throw the veil in there, too. What did this book... I'm articulating this question in my head in real time, because I've never asked it before. What did this book teach you while you were writing it? Was it was there a new technique or a new insight or anything like that you found yourself discovering for the first time?
I think having to do a road trip novel and have it not feel episodic, where it's they go here and then they go here and then they go here and then they, to have momentum of the why they're traveling was a challenge for me. And then on a more personal level, I think I put a lot into this book that I was just writing, and then I went back and revisited it and was oh God, do I need a therapist? It was just so I think writing can still surprise you. And Yeah, so I think like from like a technical perspective, I think having that like challenge with the momentum and like having it not feel like, and also them not just like killing everybody, like when you turn into a vampire, like to not have that shift of like you're with these characters in the beginning and they're not vampires, and then if they just turn into vampires and they start like become like mass murderers, like that's a little bit tricky. So finding that balance, I think from a technical perspective was what this book taught me. And then from a personal perspective, I think it's just like sometimes subconsciously like you write the book that you need. This is the first book that I like have read back after I was done working on it, because I think I still needed and still need to learn the lessons that subconsciously I put on the page. So that's been like an interesting experience that sometimes, you know, you make art and you don't realize why you're making it and you don't know what you're putting into it. And then later, the art comes back and is like, hello, and we'll teach you something that you didn't know you needed to learn.
Yeah, I love that. I'm also curious, the structure is so interesting too. Like the monster, as it were, doesn't show up for a while.
Yeah.
Like almost like 100 pages. And similarly, it's a two-hander in a way, but then you very deftly bring this ensemble into it, like also like halfway through or something like that. Can you speak to that process at all of like introducing this this already established family of very well-drawn characters to kind of not take over the narrative, but suddenly like, you know, add a sidecar to the narrative?
It was definitely a hard balance, because you want to like give all those characters time on the page, but like the story really is about Sloane's journey, so you don't want them to take over. And all of the side characters are there to like enhance Sloane and Naomi's journey. Like they're like hopefully are like fully drawn characters, and I love them all, and like I have backstories for them all, and like they feel very real to me, but they all have to serve a purpose and teach Sloane something about herself, and they all have to be there to like color Sloane and Naomi's journey. So it was difficult to find the balance of like how much, because I really love them and I kind of just wanted to like them to just be like there the whole time. But it was, you know, it's really just keeping in mind what the story is about, and everything has to serve that purpose and like keep the momentum and keep Sloane, like pushing Sloane on her arc.
Yeah. I want to ask a question that's kind of related to them too, and I don't know how, but it's about the steam factor.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you feel any outside pressure for this to be a steamy story, or did it feel like it organically came from the situations you were putting them in?
So when I first pitched this book to my editor, this was back when it was like just about the aging, and she was like, if you're gonna write a vampire novel and call it So Thirsty, there might be an expectation that it's a little bit sexy. And I was like, okay. And then it kind of, that like set off a light bulb in my head and kind of, you know, opened up the metaphor a little bit and transformed the narrative. But I didn't feel like it had to be sexy, and like I think people like to shit on romance, and I don't think I think that's snobby and unfair. I think specifically in this book, the romance is necessary to Sloane's journey, and in our lives, our relationships, our romantic relationships, always teach us about ourselves. We always get something out of them. Like, heartbreak changes you, love changes you, and the like romantic subplot in the story serves that purpose for Sloane. She would not get to where she needs to be without Henry, and the steam between them is teaching her how to be alive and making her feel again. And you know, we can go years not feeling things and not realizing that we don't feel them, or thinking that it's impossible to feel desired or to feel desire, and then something changes and it shifts something in you and it changes your whole fucking life. And I think that's really special and necessary, and I think it's part of life, and I think it's just as important to life as anything else. And so I wasn't going to gloss over the romance. The romance is like important to the narrative, and like honestly, like sex changes us. Like we learn about ourselves through that romantic connection and being vulnerable again, and especially like getting older, like, you know, who's like having to be like naked in front of somebody again. Like that's like a really vulnerable like experience, and it's very human. And so it was very important for me to have the romantic subplot. And it's interesting because I've like read it back. I'll like read it back once and be like, oh, it's not that bad. And then I'll read it back again, be like clutching my pearls. But like, I think it's like, it's not like egregious. I think every scene in the book is doing work, and it's teaching Sloane like how to be alive, and like what way do you want to live? How sexual do you want to be? Like, I think especially as women, like for me, like I grew up when like in an era where, you know, the dress code was strictly enforced for the women, and like, you know, the word slut was like the worst thing you could be called, and like there was something called Juicy Campus when I was in college, and like, you know, everyone was getting called a slut on Juicy Campus, and like it was like shame around my desire, shame around that. And part of Sloane's journey is learning to like let go of shame and live the life she wants to live. So obviously I feel very passionate about that, but I'm a big defender of romance.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I mean, it's I don't want to get off onto too big a tangent if we're going to have to start wrapping up, but it makes me think of, you know, one of the things about this moment in vampire fiction is that it kind of feels like we're finally, here's another pun, we're finally eclipsing Twilight as sort of this prejudicial sort of vampire vibe.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not going to necessarily defend the you know, the sentence by sentence writing of Twilight, but the severe amount of hate that Twilight gets, that almost froze vampires as a popular fiction entity for like a decade, was rooted in that kind of like reflexive hatred of, you know, romance.
Snobbery.
And, ugh.
Yeah. Let people like what they like.
Yeah, this is for girls.
There's value in it. Like, I think there's value if enough people like something. I think generally we have to question what the value is in it. You know?
Yeah, and I think you with this book so beautifully find a balance between, you know, kind of acknowledging in a sort of meta way, not that that's necessarily what you're doing, but just kind of looking at it from the outside in, the expectations of a 21st century vampire story, and then finding these really intimate and humane, again, I'm just going to say reflections again. Like this book has an orgy, and then it has moments of actually like really poignant tenderness and privacy between two characters. And you sketch, as you've so beautifully said already, you kind of sketch that journey between like the prurience of what is expected in a vampire story, and then the connection between two people, or not people, people-ish.
Yeah.
Hominids. They're hominids. Are vampires people?
Yeah.
Are they? Or are they something? Are they people
Vampires
plus?
are people too. Yeah.
They have feelings too, but are they vampire feelings? What is a person?
Oh my gosh.
You know? It's like I'm microdosing. I'm not. All right, we're gonna open it up for questions. So think about your questions. I'm gonna shoot some real quick lightning round questions at you while you think of questions. Okay?
Let's do it.
Lestat, good guy or bad guy?
Good guy.
All right.
Lestat. He can do no wrong by
All
me.
right. She doesn't trust Louis. I see. Do you like the sun?
Do I like the sun?
Yeah.
Yes. I need that vitamin D.
That's right. Which blood type do you think tastes the best?
All of them? I don't know. I don't even know my own blood.
You do. I don't either. It's very strange. All right. If you can't turn into a bat, what animal would you want to turn into?
Wolf.
Throw it back to such sharp teeth.
I like it. I like it. Does the Sesame Street count drink blood from the human actors or felt from the Muppets?
Both.
Correct.
He wants you to think that he's just in it for the numbers, but I bet he's vicious. Don't you think?
He can't be sated.
Yes.
That's why he's always counting. The numbers never end. All right, 2 more, so get your questions ready. In 1 word, no spoilers, what's your favorite scene in this book? Just 1 word. Was that it?
Renaissance fair.
Yeah. 2 words, but we'll count it. It's
All right.
compound. Lastly, what's a vampire's favorite fruit?
Pomegranate?
Nectarine.
Ah!
All right, questions from the audience.
So you talked about Sloan and Naomi's dream mall. What is in their dream mall? Or in reverse, what would be in your dream mall?
So my dream mall is like a version of the Rockaway Mall in Rockaway, New Jersey. I see some people are familiar. But it's like a little bit different every time. But there's a fountain, and there hasn't been. I would like to say that there's a carousel in it, but no, it's just like an endless different stores and definitely a fountain in the dream mall. Yeah.
What was your first stop at the mall? When you would go to the mall, what was the first place you would go to?
Ooh. Geez, probably I don't know. Well, it depends on how old I was. As a kid, it'd be the Disney store, and then it would graduate into American Eagle, and then to Hot Topic.
Yeah, that's the real answer. That's what we were all waiting for.
I love your IG happy hours.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to take it back to the party. So at this party in the book, what would be the signature cocktail and dessert that they're serving?
Because they're vampires, they probably to guests they would be like, what do you want? And have a full bar open for guests and just give the guests whatever they want because they can't taste the cocktails. I did make up a cocktail for this book, and I have cards, so I'll give you one. It's called the Bloody Good Time. It's cream soda, tart cherry juice, lime juice, and then vanilla vodka, which is optional. So if I were to throw a vampire orgy, that's what I would serve.
Yes.
Because of the Stevie scenes.
Yes.
And the orgy. And because of also the personal, vulnerable thoughts that went into Sloan and Naomi, right? That's
Yeah.
her name. How weird is it for you when you're does your family read this? Is that
Yeah,
strange?
so I did tell my mother-in-law, skip this one. She's like, I'll read it. And I was like, but my mom has read it, and my mom's a huge horror reader, and she was fine with it, So and my dad won't read it, so that's good. But I think in the acknowledgments I say thanks to my family for their support. If you've read this, let's just pretend you didn't. We're just not going to talk about it. And it's not it depends. I'm comfortable with other people reading it because it's not. I mean, the orgy's only a couple of pages. It's not that intense. But yeah, there's certain people I wouldn't want to read it for those reasons. But for everybody else, it's we're all adults here. Yeah.
So there's a lot of flipping and twisting of kind of typical vampire lore in this. I'm curious about what kind of research you did and just about the decisions that you made, which were super interesting.
Thank you. So I didn't do a ton of research because I try and come into it fresh, and I feel if I look up too much stuff, it's going to kind of muddle intuitively what I want it to be. And with vampires, you have a lot of space because there is so much lore. You can kind of pick and choose. And so for all of my books, I'm kind of just I'm gonna do this because it's convenient for the story. And so it was really just whatever worked in the world and wouldn't detract from they don't have fangs, because I feel like the fangs would be like a whole thing where you have to explain. Like, I kind of condensed the vampire lore into like one comic paragraph where like one character's like, you know, we don't need to ask permission to go inside, but it's polite. Like, so I kind of just like fit it in where it worked, and you know, it's not pleasant for them to be in the sun, but they're not gonna like turn to ash if they just like are exposed to a single ray. So it was just like me being like, I'm gonna make it convenient for me.
Were there any, I was curious about this too, because it, you know, pitched as Thelma Louise, sometimes Thelma and Louise meets vampires. Were there any other non-horror things that you turned to for inspiration for this?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure, I'm sure, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. I mean, by the time the book comes out, like, as I finished writing it like a year and a half ago, so I could lie to you all and pull something out of my ass, but like, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't remember.
Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Yeah.
That is such a weird thing about book tour. Any other audience questions? Yes, you, sir.
Because it's a vampire book, did you write it at night and kind of get method with it, or were you writing during the day?
I am not a night owl, so it was definitely sometimes I would get up really early when it was still dark and write, but I did write it during the winter, and it's set during the winter, so them like being cold and in the snow, that was a little bit, if I'd go for a walk, I'd come back and be like, whoa. Like, they're not going to feel cold anymore because this sucks. And that's part of how I developed the vampire lore. They don't need jackets because I don't want to wear a jacket.
Wish fulfillment.
Yes.
Any other questions from the audience? Climate Cloud Jamming.
This book is really steamy, and it's really beautiful, but it's really violent. Like, there's like some moments in this that go like really intense, and I feel like what Nat kind of mentioned about the idea of like how the vampires, the kind of monster doesn't necessarily reveal itself until 100 pages in. Like, in reading this, like, you get really kind of like seduced into this kind of friendship, and then the first attack happens, and it's just so jarring. It's like really kind of scary. And you know, there was that moment I was like, oh my god, I forgot that I was reading a vampire novel. Yeah. And there's a little bit of a seduction there, and I guess my question is, what did writing vampires provide you that, say, werewolves didn't, that witches didn't? Like, this one gets bloody.
I think vampires, what's so fascinating about vampires is like, and it's kind of the same way with witches, whereas they're in control, but witches aren't, like, so witches are in control, but they're not typically super violent. Werewolves are not in control, but they are very violent. Vampires are in control and they are violent. So that was fun for me because, like, I think, like, I get at, like, whenever I write a book, I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm an angry person. like all of this, like, suppressed rage comes out on the page where I'm just like, yeah, just, and I think what was fun about this book is, like, to have a creature that's totally in control of their power and just taking what they want is really fun. Like, it's a little bit of wish fulfillment, I think. I think that's why we like monsters. And I think that's why we like vampires, because they're powerful and they get to take what they want and they get to be in charge and kind of decide their own life. And so that was really fun. And I think it was a more controlled violence versus human or vampire on human violence, which, like, most of I can't really think of in my books like we're straight up killing people. This was like a book where I got to, like, straight up kill people. Don't take me away. I'm a very good person. I'm nice.
That's what we came here for.
Yeah.
Is it time to wrap up? We can do one more question.
You had mentioned that you liked being surprised when writing. So is there anything that you didn't mention, and without getting into any spoilers, is there anything else that surprised you about So Thirsty?
Yes, there's a character who comes in pretty late in the novel who is very fun and unexpected, who kind of just came out of nowhere. And I think you'll know when you meet her. And it was just like really cool to like meet somebody. She sort of just like walked out of the woods and like totally surprised me. And I did want to introduce like an older character to like, because the book is about aging and like what would happen if you were a vampire and you returned much later. But I didn't plan for her. She just kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, nice to meet you. But if I plotted it out, I wouldn't have met her. So she really surprised me, and I love her, and I would love to write like a spin-off novella about this character.
So thirsty to even thirstier. More thirst, more so. All right, well, thank you guys so much.
You so much.
Rachel, congratulations.
Thank you, Nat.
Oh my
Thank
God.
you all for coming out. It really means a lot to me.
This book is so good. Tell your friends.
It really is.
And thanks, live stream. Sorry I forgot to repeat the questions. I'm sure you figured it
Loud,
out.
it was perfect. Awesome. Let's give it up one more time for Rachel. I want to encourage anybody on a live stream to buy a copy of the book. Link is in the description. And if anybody didn't get a copy when they checked in, we still have some available at the front, as well as Nat's books. We're gonna line up pretty immediately right here on the left-hand side where my lovely coworkers are pointing. That's where Rachel's gonna be signing. You can line up as soon as I stop talking. We break down the space pretty quickly, so just grab all your belongings, please, and thank you. And that's it. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that wasn't too unhinged. Can you hear me on the live stream? I was unhinged.
So wonderful. I love this.
Yeah, it'll be. I